September 14th, 1944. 02:10 hours. The rain-soaked jungle outside A-tape. You hear it before you see anything, metal whispering against metal, the careful click of a magazine being seated in the dark. No voices, no shouted orders, just breathing, shallow and controlled, fogging the air inches from men's faces. Staff Sergeant William Bill Hargreaves, United States Army, crouches behind a fallen palm, water soaking through his sleeves. The jungle smells wrong tonight, sweet rot mixed with oil and damp canvas. Somewhere ahead, barely 30 yards, Japanese defensive positions thread the treeline. Shallow bunkers, spider holes, logs reinforced with earth. They've been there for weeks. Every night the same routine. American patrols probe forward. Japanese fire snaps back, precise and disciplined. Grenades roll, men crawl away bleeding. By dawn, nothing changes. Until tonight. Hargreaves presses 2 fingers to his throat. Hold. The men freeze. You can almost feel the tension vibrating through the leaves, like the jungle itself knows something is coming. Private Daniel Ortiz, 19, grips his Thompson submachine gun tighter than he ever has before. The weapon feels heavier than usual. It should, because inside the magazine, something is very wrong. This isn't standard .45 ACP ball. Earlier that evening, behind a tarpaulin barely keeping the rain off, an ordnance corporal had worked with surgical focus. Carefully, quietly, he had modified a handful of cartridges, packing them with additional explosive compound, sealing them by hand. No manuals, no authorization, just a shared understanding. We need something that hits harder than bullets. The Thompson wasn't designed for this. Everyone knows it. That's why no one talks about it out loud. Hargreaves gives a slow nod. The point team melts forward, boots sinking into mud that tries to pull them back. Ortiz follows, heart hammering so hard it feels audible. Every step risks a snapped branch, a cough, a betraying splash. A shadow moves ahead. A Japanese sentry rises from a shallow pit, rifle slung, cigarette ember glowing faintly. He doesn't see them. Ortiz raises the Thompson. Time slows to something thick and unpleasant. He squeezes the trigger. The first burst hits the log-reinforced wall behind the sentry, and instead of the dull, fleshy thud of impact, the night detonates. Not a sharp crack like a grenade. A violent, concussive blast, as if the jungle itself just punched back. The bunker face erupts. Logs splinter outward, dirt and debris blast into the air. The sentry vanishes in a cloud of earth and fire. For half a second, everything is silent. Then hell breaks loose. Japanese shouts erupt from every direction. Weapons fire lashes blindly into the dark, but the Americans are already moving. Hargreaves roars, forward, forward, and the platoon surges. Ortiz fires again. Another burst. Another explosion. Each impact doesn't just punch holes, it bursts. Inside the bunkers, confined spaces amplify the blast. Shrapnel becomes everything, wood, metal, bone. The Japanese defenders don't understand what's happening. They're used to bullets. They know how to absorb rifle fire, how to duck grenades, how to ride out mortars. But this comes from a weapon they thought they understood. The Thompson is supposed to spray, suppress, kill at close range. It is not supposed to blow apart cover. Men scramble from their positions, disoriented, some bleeding from ears and eyes. A machine gun opens fire, and then stops abruptly as a burst hits its sandbagged nest and detonates inside. The gun crew never fires again. Hargreaves vaults a low embankment, firing his own Thompson. He feels the shockwave thump through his chest as rounds impact. It's like carrying a pocket-sized demolition charge. For the first time in weeks, the Japanese line isn't stiffening. It's collapsing. A bunker on the left erupts from within, wood peeling outward, roof lifting like a lid before crashing back down. Screams cut through the chaos, high and panicked. Ortiz stumbles, slips in the mud, catches himself. His hands are shaking now, not fear, adrenaline. The power in this weapon feels unreal, wrong, effective. Too effective. The platoon overruns the first line in minutes. Minutes. Positions that held for days fall apart under the shock. Japanese soldiers retreat deeper into the jungle, abandoning weapons, leaving wounded behind. Some run straight into American fire, too disoriented to think. By 02:30, the fighting is already moving forward, something that hasn't happened here in over a month. Hargreaves pauses near a shattered bunker, chest heaving. He stares at the damage. The logs didn't just break. They exploded outward as if something inside wanted out. He looks at Ortiz. What the hell was in those magazines? Ortiz swallows. Don't know, Sarge. That's a lie, everyone knows enough. But no one says it. Because the implication is dangerous. If this works, and it clearly does, then everything about close-range jungle fighting just changed. Behind the lines, officers will demand explanations. Engineers will ask how it was done. Lawyers will ask if it was allowed. But out here, in the wet dark where men die by inches, only one thing matters. The Japanese line is broken. And for the first time since arriving on this cursed stretch of jungle, the Americans aren't just surviving the night. They own it. As dawn creeps in, pale and uncertain, Hargreaves receives a radio update from battalion. Enemy resistance ahead has disintegrated. Patrols report abandoned positions across a wide frontage. No coordinated counterattack. No organized defense. It doesn't make sense. Unless something traveled faster than orders. Unless fear did. Hargreaves looks back at the men reloading, hands black with grime, faces hollow with exhaustion and disbelief. Several Thompsons sit beside them, magazines half empty. Modified. Unmarked. Unofficial. He realizes, with a chill that has nothing to do with the rain, that tonight wasn't just a successful assault. It was a demonstration. And whatever they unleashed in the jungle is going to spread, whether command approves it or not. Because once soldiers see a way to survive the night, they don't forget it. The jungle does not return to silence after the firing stops. It never does. September 14th, 1944. Just before dawn. Forward perimeter, outside A-tape. Mist clings to the ground, curling through shattered brush and broken logs. Smoke hangs low, trapped beneath the canopy. The air tastes metallic, burned wood, cordite, something sharper that makes the back of the throat tighten. Staff Sergeant Hargreaves walks the newly taken line with his platoon leaders. No one speaks above a whisper. They keep expecting the counterattack. It doesn't come. Instead, they find evidence. A bunker peeled, open from the inside. A machine gun nest collapsed inward like a kicked anthill. A shallow trench where the earth itself looks bruised. This isn't what bullets do. Private Ortiz kneels near one position, staring at a log wall blown apart in jagged fragments. He presses two fingers to his ears. They're still ringing. Everyone's are. A corporal mutters, "Looks like somebody charges went off in there." Hargreaves shakes his head. No satchel did that. Word moves fast, faster than runners, faster than radios. By mid-morning, scouts report something stranger. Japanese forward units are pulling back without pressure. Positions beyond the breach are abandoned. Weapons left behind. Ammunition crates unopened. The enemy didn't just lose ground. They lost confidence. At battalion command, officers pore over maps that suddenly don't make sense. Resistance markers vanish. Expected engagement zones go quiet. A major taps the paper with his pencil. They didn't even try to hold the second line. An intelligence officer answers carefully. "Prisoners are shaken, sir." That word again. Shaken. The first prisoner brought in is a young Japanese private, hands trembling so badly 2 guards have to steady him. His uniform is torn, face streaked with mud and sweat. He smells like smoke. Through an interpreter, he keeps repeating the same phrase. The gun exploded. The gun exploded inside. They press him for clarification. Grenades, mortars, artillery. He shakes his head violently. Small gun, many shots, each shot boom. He gestures with his hands, spreading them outward. Then he flinches, instinctively ducking as if expecting another blast. That afternoon, a captured non-commissioned officer confirms it. He speaks slowly, choosing words with care. The Americans used their machine pistols, he says, but when the bullets struck, the bunkers burst. Men thought they were under demolition attack. He pauses. They believed new weapons had arrived. New weapons. That belief matters more than the reality. Because in jungle warfare, perception is survival. By nightfall, the Americans advance again, cautiously, expecting resistance that never fully materializes. Skirmishes break out, but they're disorganized. Japanese units fight briefly, then disengage. No coordinated fire, no depth. It's as if the defensive web has torn. Private Ortiz reloads under cover of a tree, hands moving on instinct. He notices his magazine is lighter now, almost empty. He hesitates before seating another. For the first time, fear flickers, not of being shot, but of what his weapon does when it hits. You can almost feel that moment, the pause where a soldier realizes power has crossed a line. Hargreaves sees it too. He doesn't say anything. He just claps Ortiz on the shoulder and moves on. In combat, hesitation kills. Reflection comes later, if it comes at all. By the second night, the pattern is undeniable. Japanese patrols avoid close contact. When they do engage, they keep distance, firing from range and withdrawing at the first sign of American advance. Bunkers that once anchored their defense are either abandoned or lightly manned. The Thompson has become something else in their minds. Not a spray weapon, a demolition tool. Rumors ripple through Japanese ranks, wild, distorted, inevitable. The Americans have ammunition that explodes on impact. Their submachine guns destroy cover. No position is safe at close range. None of it is technically true. And all of it is functionally devastating. At regimental headquarters, a colonel listens as Hargreaves's company commander explains what happened. The report is careful, vague. Words like unexpected effects and enhanced terminal impact do heavy lifting. The colonel removes his glasses. Was this authorized? A pause. No, sir. Another pause. The colonel exhales through his nose. Did it work? Yes, sir. That's the end of the discussion. No written order follows, no formal endorsement, but no prohibition either. Ammunition inspections become selective. Ordnance officers look the other way when certain magazines are set aside. Because the line moved. Because fewer stretchers came back. Across the theater, similar improvisations begin to appear, not always identical, not always effective, but driven by the same impulse. Jungle fighting compresses distances. Engagements happen at arm's length. Anything that multiplies shock becomes attractive. On other islands, other units hear whispers of what happened near Atape. The story grows in the telling. By the time it reaches Morotai, the Thompson is rumored to be firing explosive bullets. Japanese intelligence intercepts reflect the confusion. Reports describe American night assaults with bursting gunfire that shatters cover and causes panic. Defensive doctrine begins to shift, less reliance on fixed positions, more emphasis on movement and depth. But depth is hard in jungle, and movement at night favors the attacker. For the Americans, the nights belong to them now. Patrols push deeper. Ambushes succeed more often than they fail. The psychological edge compounds with every engagement. Japanese units that once dominated darkness now fear it. Ortiz feels it during a later patrol when a single burst sends enemy soldiers scrambling instead of counterattacking. He doesn't even see who he hits, only hears the explosion of impact and the sudden retreat. Afterward, he sits against a tree, breathing hard. What if this gets out of hand? He asks no one in particular. No one answers. Because everyone understands the unspoken truth. War doesn't ask permission before escalating. The Japanese line didn't collapse overnight because of casualties alone. It collapsed because certainty did. Because the rules they trained under no longer applied. Because the weapon they thought they understood betrayed them. Because every bunker, every log wall, every carefully prepared position now felt provisional, temporary, unsafe. And once a defender believes his shelter can betray him, the battle is already half lost. As dawn breaks on the third day, aerial observers report something unprecedented. Entire sections of the Japanese forward defense have withdrawn without direct engagement. The map changes again. Hargreaves studies it silently. He knows this won't last forever. The enemy will adapt. They always do. But for now, the jungle belongs to the men who turned a familiar weapon into something unexpected. Something terrifying. And somewhere, far above this fight, officers and planners are beginning to realize what the infantry already knows. This wasn't just a local improvisation. It was a crack in the logic of the war. And cracks, once formed, spread. September 17th, 1944. 03:40 hours. The outer jungle approaches beyond A-tape. The night no longer feels neutral. It feels owned. Japanese listening posts that once whispered warnings through the dark now sit empty. Trip flares go untouched. Wire obstacles remain untriggered. Patrols move forward and find paths open that had been killing grounds just days earlier. Staff Sergeant Hargreaves halts his platoon with a raised fist. The men sink instinctively into cover, muscles coiled, expecting the sudden crack of fire that always comes too late to stop. It doesn't. Instead, there is only rain dripping from leaves and the distant surf. A scout crawls back, eyes wide. Nothing ahead, Sarge. Positions look, walked away from. Walked away from. That phrase spreads through the platoon like static. They advance cautiously and confirm it. Foxholes still warm from bodies, cooking fires cold but not dismantled, ammunition crates stacked neatly as if someone expected to return. But the Japanese don't return. Because fear has already done what artillery couldn't. Captured radio traffic later paints the picture clearly. Japanese commanders struggle to understand what hit them. Reports contradict each other. Some units describe explosive gunfire. Others insist Americans are using microgrenades fired automatically. A few believe entirely new weapons have been deployed. None of the explanations matter. Only the conclusion does. Close contact is no longer survivable. Japanese doctrine in the jungle depends on proximity, ambush at short range, sudden counterattacks, close quarters fighting where discipline and concealment matter more than firepower. But now, proximity is lethal in a new way. If the Americans get close, cover doesn't save you. Hargreaves's company pushes deeper than expected on the fourth night. Resistance stiffens briefly near a stream crossing. A Japanese squad opens fire, disciplined and sharp. Ortiz returns fire. One burst. The impact detonates against a log breastwork. The blast throws two defenders backward into the water. The rest break contact instantly, no attempt to hold, no flanking maneuver. They vanish into the jungle. Hargreaves doesn't pursue, he doesn't need to. The objective is already achieved. Ground taken, pressure applied, confidence shattered. In the days that follow, the pattern repeats across multiple sectors. Japanese units fall back to secondary lines without a fight, abandoning terrain they bled for earlier in the campaign. At regimental headquarters, maps are updated with cautious disbelief. A staff officer draws new front lines in pencil, half expecting to erase them the next morning. They aren't erased. By the end of the week, American patrols report something unheard of in this theater: gaps, entire stretches of jungle where Japanese forces simply aren't present. The enemy hasn't been annihilated. They've been dislocated. Private Ortiz feels the shift most clearly during a night patrol when he realizes something terrifying. He is no longer as afraid as he should be. The Thompson hangs ready, the magazine is seated, he knows what it can do now. That knowledge is intoxicating and dangerous, because confidence in combat is a blade that cuts both ways. Ortiz fires less carefully, bursts are longer, targets blur into shapes. He's stopped twice by Hargreaves, who grabs his shoulder hard enough to hurt. "Control it," the sergeant snaps. "This thing ain't magic." Ortiz nods, chastened, but inside something resists. When a weapon changes the balance of fear, it changes behavior. Men lean on it, trust it, depend on it. That dependence worries officers more than the legality of the modification ever could. At division level, intelligence officers compile reports describing sudden Japanese withdrawals, decreased bunker occupancy, and heightened nighttime caution. The conclusions are understated but unmistakable. Enemy morale degraded by unexpected weapon effects during close assault. No mention of Thompsons. No mention of modified ammunition. Just unexpected effects. Because once something is written down, it has to be answered for. Behind the scenes, senior NCOs quietly limit how much of the altered ammunition circulates, not because it doesn't work, but because they've seen what it does to the men using it. The power to collapse a position with a squeeze of the trigger changes the calculus of restraint. And restraint still matters. Meanwhile, Japanese countermeasures begin to appear. Defensive positions are spread thinner. Logs are spaced apart instead of layered. More emphasis is placed on withdrawal routes. Units are instructed not to cluster, not to hold fixed positions under sustained close fire. It's adaptation, but it comes late. Because adaptation requires time. And time is exactly what they've lost. One intercepted message, later translated, captures the shift perfectly. American night attack weapons destroy shelters, do not engage at close range unless ordered. Survival takes precedence. Survival takes precedence. That sentence marks a quiet collapse. By October, the local campaign is effectively decided. Japanese forces still exist in strength, but they no longer control the tempo. They react instead of dictate. They yield ground rather than contest it. Hargreaves stands on a ridgeline overlooking jungle that was once lethal and now feels hollow. He watches men dig in, secure, almost calm. He knows better than to believe it will stay this way. War always finds balance again. But he also knows something irreversible has happened. The Thompson, already feared for its firepower, has rewritten expectations, not because of how many men it kills, but because of what it does to certainty. The Japanese once believed that if they built strong enough positions, they could survive anything short of direct hits. That belief is gone. And once belief breaks, doctrine follows. Ortiz cleans his weapon that night with slow, methodical care. He doesn't talk much anymore. When he sleeps, he dreams of impacts, not bodies, but explosions erupting where there shouldn't be explosions. He wakes before dawn, heart racing. Somewhere ahead, the jungle waits. And somewhere beyond this fight, others are taking notes, quietly, carefully, about what happens when infantry turns familiarity into shock. Because this won't stay local. It never does. October 3rd, 1944. Just before sunrise. The interior, jungle beyond A-tape. The birds start first. High sharp calls slicing through the mist as American patrols move along a ridgeline that, on every map, should be crawling with enemy defenders. It is. The jungle opens in front of them like a door left unlocked. Staff Sergeant Hargreaves stops, squints at the ground. Fresh boot prints, Japanese, dozens of them, all heading the same direction. Away! This isn't a tactical withdrawal under pressure. There are no rear guards, no traps, no attempt to delay pursuit, just movement, quiet, hurried, deliberate. A decision made somewhere in the dark. By midday, reconnaissance confirms what the infantry already feels in its bones. Japanese local defenses have collapsed across an entire sector, not destroyed, not encircled. Abandoned. Headquarters struggles to describe it. After-action reports use language that dances around the truth. Enemy resistance evaporated, positions vacated without engagement, operational cohesion degraded. But among the men, the explanation is simpler. They don't trust their holes anymore. That trust was everything. Japanese jungle doctrine depended on layered close-in defenses, spider holes, bunkers, interlocking fields of fire designed to punish any advance at arm's length. It wasn't just about killing attackers. It was about controlling space psychologically. Make the enemy fear every step. Now the fear has changed sides. Because the Thompson, once dismissed by Japanese intelligence as a spray-and-pray weapon, has become something else entirely in their imagination. A gun that doesn't just kill you when it hits you, but destroys the space you're hiding in. The effect compounds. On Leyte, units arriving later hear rumors before they ever hear shots. Veterans of New Guinea speak in low voices about night assaults where bunkers burst apart, about log walls that didn't stop anything, about sudden explosions where there should have been impacts. The stories grow sharper in the telling. The truth matters less than the lesson. Don't let them get close. Japanese commanders attempt to restore discipline. Orders emphasize range, dispersion, movement. But doctrine built for close terrain doesn't rewrite itself overnight. And men who believe their shelters can betray them don't linger inside. Private Ortiz feels the long tail of that fear during a firefight weeks later. A Japanese squad breaks contact after minimal engagement, too early, too fast. Ortiz fires once, and the blast effect sends the rest running. He lowers the Thompson slowly. He isn't proud. He isn't horrified. He's unsettled. Because he understands now that the collapse wasn't caused by one weapon or one trick. It was caused by uncertainty. At regimental headquarters, a senior officer puts it bluntly during a closed briefing. "We didn't just kill men," he says, "we killed assumptions." That sentence never appears in any report. Unofficially, the modified magazines fade out of use, not because they're banned, but because the situation no longer demands them. The line has moved, the resistance has changed shape, the moment has passed. But the impact remains. Japanese forces still fight, fiercely, courageously, but something essential has been lost. The night no longer belongs to them. Close terrain no longer guarantees safety. Every bunker feels provisional. A temporary shelter in a war that no longer respects walls. Years later, historians will debate the details, how widespread the practice really was, how effective it truly proved, whether it violated regulations or simply bent them. Those debates miss the point. Because wars aren't only won by tactics you can diagram. They're won by moments when one side realizes, suddenly, that the rules they lived by no longer apply. In the jungle in 1944, that realization came at night, in a burst of automatic fire that didn't behave the way it was supposed to. And once that happened, Japanese lines didn't collapse because they were overrun. They collapsed because staying no longer made sense. Hargreaves watches his men dig in on ground taken almost too easily. He knows the war isn't over. He knows harder fights are ahead. But he also knows this. Somewhere back in the jungle, an enemy commander made a choice, not because of orders, not because of casualties, but because faith in cover died. And when that faith died, the line went with it. The Thompson didn't end the war. But for a few decisive nights, it ended the idea that the jungle could always protect you. And that was enough.